Good morning and welcome to the Texas Oil and Gas Association Permian Basin and Panhandle Virtual Energy Summit. To say we are in unprecedented times is an understatement. The disruption to society from the COVID pandemic has made everyone worldwide adjust our way of living, working, and educating our children. That's why we are bringing to you this virtual energy summit, powering your community. Oil and gas has been the cornerstone of the Texas economy and will continue to be. The Permian Basin and Panhandle are dynamic to the Texas economy, and we have a very insightful program today on how we can all power forward together. No event is possible without our partners, and I want to start by thanking TXOGA's 2020 event sponsors, Concho Resources, PDC Energy, Oventive, and the Port of Corpus Christi. A huge thank you to our Energy Summit Series sponsors, Chevron, Marathon Petroleum, Occidental, Sempra LNG, and Energy Transfer. And we couldn't do this without our partners in the Permian Basin and the Panhandle, the Permian Strategic Partnership, and the Permian Basin Association of Pipeliners. Many families have benefited and businesses have grown substantially in the Permian Basin and Panhandle thanks to oil and natural gas activity. And just as this mighty region has prospered, so has Texas. In 2019, just in this region, oil and natural gas activity has accounted for over $653 million paid directly to school districts in 60 counties, and over $209 million was paid directly to counties and oil and natural gas mineral property taxes. Additionally, tens of thousands of Texans' families in the Permian Basin and Panhandle are supported directly by the industry in jobs that pay an average of $125,000. And we'll get to more statewide benefits in just a moment. But right now, it's important to know that while producing the revenues that funds our schools, roads, and first responders, oil and natural gas companies are simultaneously investing heavily in environmentally sound technologies that are resulting in significant environmental progress. Pioneering technologies, innovations, and advancements allow the industry to develop and deploy cleaner energy technologies and world-class emissions control systems. The industry's commitment to progress is a major reason why air quality has improved dramatically over the last 20 years. All in all, Texas is cleaner, stronger, and better because of the positive influence of oil and natural gas produced right here in the Lone Star State. But it's not just our industry that recognizes this. A recent study confirms that 7 in 10 Texans support a candidate who supports domestic energy production. And a recent national report revealed that U.S. workers actually like and prefer their oil and natural gas jobs, saying they provide better pay, health benefits, and pensions, as well as career opportunities as compared to those in renewable industries. This is important because many politicians are talking about transitioning oil and natural gas industry workers into the green energy sector. But the people doing the work, well, they say they're happy with their jobs. It's important to know that any plan seeking to undermine this industry will set back climate progress, put Texans out of jobs, decrease funding for our state and local governments, and increase your energy cost while making us dependent on foreign sources for our basic energy needs. Knowing how imperative this industry is to our state, it's so important to make your voice heard in the upcoming election. On the screen, you should see important voter registration information and upcoming deadlines. Please mark your calendars and go vote this year. Take a family member with you, take friends with you, take many of them. It's important that you vote, and it's also important to back candidates who understand we can have both a good environment and good jobs. Now I'd like to introduce our first guest speaker. To lead off our discussion of how the oil and natural gas industry is powering your community, we're very pleased today to welcome the Mayor of Midland, Patrick Payton. Mayor, we're so delighted that you could be with us today and look forward to a conversation. Good morning.
Well, good morning. It's great to be with you, Todd, and everybody who's on this Zoom call. I'm sure everybody who's watching is tired of staring at their computer, acting like they're in front of live people as I am. And I'm not much of a hugger, but I've told people lately that I'd love to just be in a meeting with a bunch of people so we could hug each other. And if you want to wear your mask, that's fine with me. I probably won't wear mine. But it's great to be here in Midland. When I think about Midland, even as I was driving in this morning and we had a little bit of rain, which is an amazing thing. Over here, I just started thinking about the words that reminded me of these people and words that came to my mind. And it may sound a little bit pastoral, but that was my previous career. It's a people in a region that's resilient, they're rugged, and they're resourceful. And even though we're being hit by unprecedented times, you can feel among the people of Midland, and I think you can feel it among the people of the Permian Basin, they're ready for a fight. They know what they do is critical. They know what they do provides the power and the security for this region, this state, this nation, and even the world. Even though this green fairy tales keeps showing up, I noticed, I was listening to you talk about how much the oil and gas industry has committed to education. I'm not sure you have those same numbers for what the windmill industry and the solar industry has done for education and for the infrastructure of this state and this nation. But the fact of the matter is, it's time for us to seize back the narrative, and it's time for us to be proud of what we do, even more proud of what we do, and fight this uphill battle for this industry that truly takes care of our state and our nation and our world.
Mary, you've jumped right in. You've rolled up your sleeves. You've demonstrated great leadership for this industry, and we thank you for that. You mentioned the men and women and the 3 R's resiliency that they have demonstrated. I think all Americans should recognize that even in spite of this pandemic, they still had reliable, affordable energy supplies to them. And that's because men and women were on the front line, regardless of their own personal health, made certain that these products are delivered daily. And no one does that better than those citizens that we're talking about today in the Permian Basin and the Panhandle. Mayor, you have really jumped in on and demonstrated leadership, and I want to talk about that a little bit. Mayors are very important. They play an important role. I've served on my local city council as mayor pro tem. We've seen, though, some large urban city mayors around the country, particularly a group called climate mayors. And there's been a lot of negative rhetoric towards oil and gas from this group. And as you have jumped in and have developed relationships, do you expect this trend to continue in these larger cities and even in Texas? And that's kind of a compound question. So one part, do you expect that to expand? And then number 2, what do you need from industry to support you as you amplify your efforts?
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to that. When I was first elected, I was given some advice. Come to find out, I'm not sure it was good advice, that I ought to go to the U.S. Conference of Mayors in Washington, D.C. What they didn't tell me was it was the U.S. Conference of Democrat Mayors. I didn't know that till I got there. And then I started listening to Mayor Garcetti, who is showing us tremendous leadership in California. I say that tongue in cheek as we see what's going on there. And I began to hear this phrase: mayors, the U.S. Conference of Mayors is going to commit the next decade to be the decade of the environment. And so I started paying more attention. I went to an energy summit at the U.S. Conference of Mayors, was not given an opportunity to give the speech that I had prepared and told I was going to be able to give. Walked outside to the press gaggle and just stopped in the middle of it. And I said, are any of you willing to have a conversation with somebody who knows about the reality that you can't get to a Green New Deal without oil and gas powering the way there? And that started the conversation. What I've noticed is the impact of mayors throughout this nation has increased. Just about every voice we hear, and even today in the pandemic and in other cities and states, you see these mayors becoming front and center. So their voices are becoming front and center. But what's missing are the voices of mayors of what I've just called energy city mayors. So working with industry, working with the PSP, working with others, we're in the process right now of putting together a letter. We're inviting mayors all over the nation who are involved in energy cities to really partner with us so we can be an alternative voice to this alternative fairy tale that's being promoted all over Washington, D.C., and it's descending upon Washington, D.C. from as far as the West Coast and all over the Eastern Seaboard to show up and to lobby for something that is really not sustainable, if you really want to use the word sustainable. So what we need is the help of every industry leader to get in front of your mayor and make sure your mayor understands that you are depending on him to be a voice of reason and a voice of authority in Washington, D.C., as well as in your state capital. And hopefully we can begin a movement that is an alternative voice, not one of these voices filled with sarcasm or anything else. We don't need that. We have the facts on our side. And that's the reality we need to bring to bear on this. And so I'm hoping by the time we get into a new legislature, We'll be able to make our way to Washington, D.C. And if you can't get to Washington, D.C., write letters, call your representatives. And we should, quite frankly, be storming the halls of Congress to go in right behind the Environmental Defense Fund or right behind a mayor of one of these climate cities and say, let me tell you the true story that you don't have to be afraid of. So hopefully we can begin to change that narrative.
Well, your vision is one that's important for the future viability of Texas and our nation. So we appreciate that vision. In wrapping up your welcome to us and along the lines that you just talked about, it seems to me if, you know, in the legislature, if a bill is passed, there's something called a fiscal note that has to be developed, or that policy has a price tag associated with it. It seems like what we're hearing about some of these policies from some of these large urban mayors, there's no relationship about the cost to its citizens. So as you pursue this effort, maybe that's a part of the dialogue that you would like to consider about really, you know, if a city is going to have a policy, maybe they need to have the price tag so their citizens can see what that's going to cost them personally to their lives.
Well, absolutely. And I'll conclude with just a short story, because besides just the monetary cost, we've done, in my opinion, a very poor job of advocating and talking about how important our industry is just to the everyday lives of people. I was being interviewed by that conservative icon publication called Texas Monthly not too long ago. And as the young man had his microphone in my face with the fuzzy wind protector on it, he started pivoting to the environment. And I just stopped him and I said, do you understand that you couldn't even be conducting this interview with me if it wasn't for the byproducts of the oil and gas industry? I said, this little fuzzy thing on your microphone is made from byproducts of the oil and gas industry. Your tennis shoes are made from this. Your phone is dependent on this. And I told him, I said, even if you drove a Tesla here, you weren't able to power it without natural gas that could power what you were plugging it into. And this is what he said. You know, I never thought about that. So when it comes to a narrative, we've got to seize that back. And it goes, final note, I was being interviewed by a German newspaper last week. And the reporter asked me a question. She said, in the midst of the pandemic and the slowdown in the industry, what are you doing about the oil and gas wells that are just left wide open, spewing all over everywhere? And I said, are you serious with that question? Do you even understand what happens out here? So if anybody listening thinks for a moment that the state and the nation even understands what we do as an industry, you're mistaken. We are so far behind the 8 ball in communicating what we do and the value of what we do. And that's by starting at mayors, city councils, legislators. I hope when the Texas legislature convenes that we do everything we can to make sure our Texas legislature is even willing to say the greatness of this state and this nation and even the world depends on what we do in Texas with oil and gas. And that's not hyperbole. That's just if you want to get up in the morning and do daily life.
Mayor, you've given our listeners a ton to think about. You challenged them to be a part of this conversation, and I can't thank you enough for doing that. And I so thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to continuing our dialogue with you as you continue to develop this kind of leadership. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Honored to be a part of it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Now, I would like to welcome the President and CEO of the Permian Strategic Partnership, Tracee Bentley, to our program. Tracee, we're glad that you're able to join us today in this virtual setting, and I'm excited about your remarks. I know that you have jumped in and we're working extremely hard, and so welcome. Glad to have you this morning.
Todd, thank you so much for having me. If I could start by thanking you and TXOGA for all the leadership that you provide our industry in the state of Texas, along with the Lieutenant Governor, and certainly the great Mayor of Midland, Mayor Payton, who provides incredible leadership out here in the Permian Basin for us. So it's an honor to be with you today.
Well, thank you, Tracee. You're a big part of this leadership for Texas to move us forward, to help tackle the challenges that we're facing. And I know that the Permian Strategic Partnership has taken a new approach to community development and regional development. So I thought this morning, if you would share with us a couple of minutes of what's on your mind, and then let's get into some questions about what's going on in this particular region, if you will.
Absolutely. Thanks, Todd. Well, for those of you who don't know, the Permian Strategic Partnership is comprised of 20 of the country's largest energy companies. And our mission is to strengthen and improve the quality of life for Permian Basin residents by partnering with local leaders to develop and implement strategic plans that foster superior schools, safer roads, quality healthcare, affordable housing, and a trained workforce. We're unlike any other entity that industry has put together before, and so we're kind of flying the plane, so to speak, as we build it. But we're so proud of the work that we have done and the partnerships that we've built out here in the Permian Basin. Like many other organizations, due to COVID-19 and low oil prices, we've had to really refocus and reprioritize the things that we are working on to meet the needs of the community. And here recently, Todd, that those areas have primarily come down to certainly healthcare, education, and road safety is always a top priority for us out here in the Permian. So I think one of the things that has come, that COVID-19 and the perfect storm, as we call it out here with oil prices as well, that has really come to light is just how resilient our community in the Permian is. You talk about pulling that I've never seen so many positive folks and positive attitudes, and it's not so much about what we can't do, it's a lot about what we can do and what we are doing. So the Permian Strategic Partnership, we know that we need to support communities through non-traditional ways, something that industry historically hasn't done. And our role as corporate citizens goes far beyond our operations. The PSP is just one way that we want to demonstrate our industry's role and our commitment to the state of Texas, to the Permian Basin, and to the entire country, and even the world. Our members have invested hundreds of millions of dollars in philanthropic, community, and environmental efforts, particularly in underserved areas. And that's on top of the hundreds of billions of dollars that we've invested in our operations, which, as you pointed out earlier, Todd, creates jobs, provides affordable energy, and contributes to local, state, and federal revenues. Todd, I think I'll stop there, and if you want to move into questions.
Well, you have jumped right in, Tracee, and we appreciate your leadership. And you really touched on, I think, the key areas that every family cares about. We care about healthcare. We care about education for our kids. We care about a safe transportation system. And PSP has been leading the charge on this regional approach to make certain that the Permian can develop and grow, because producing this energy requires a high level of infrastructure. One of the keys to I think this industry is that educated workforce, that skilled workforce. We know that with the decline in demand for our product globally, that it has, impacted families, that workers have been displaced, and it's been very difficult. So as PSP thinks about this, do you have ideas on keeping this workforce engaged as our industry rebounds and as demand resumes?
Todd, we do. And we know that our industry, we have some of the most resilient, hardworking men and women of any industry out there, really. And when you're here in the Permian, you see it firsthand every day on a day-to-day basis. Well, I want to start by saying the amount of community service that the oil and gas industry has and continues to put in, whether it's at our local food banks, whether it's at schools, you name it. People are giving their time and their energy during this downtime in the industry and really making a huge commitment and difference in our communities out here. And we see it every day. Quite frankly, I think that's part of the reason that we're doing so well out here through the pandemic and through oil prices is due to the level of volunteerism that's gone on through our industry. So I can't say enough great things about that. Next, we know that if there's going to be drilling anywhere in this country, it's going to be right here in the Permian. And we know how important a skilled workforce is for our area. And so being a little creative and thinking about how can we retain that workforce has been a top priority, not only for PSP, but for so many in our community. So a couple of projects that PSP has been looking at is, number one, we want to make sure that we don't let any time lag in preparing our area for the best trained workforce we would suggest in the country, but certainly in the state and in the region. And so making sure that we are prepared and well equipped to have a solid veterans workforce has been a top priority of us. And Mayor Payton's been an amazing partner with us on this, but working with America's Warrior Partnership to do an assessment of is the basin ready and equipped to take on veterans as part of our workforce has been a top priority. We also know that right now is a time where many of our employees may have some extra time. And so we have community colleges in need of adjunct faculty for skill sets that our young and soon to be future workforce is going to come into. And so putting their skills and their knowledge to work, educating in our community colleges across the basin has been just a wonderful thing to see, and we can continue to do that. Finally, taking this time to encourage our educators to do externships with our industry and really get to know who we are and what we do and all of the important economic contributions that you mentioned earlier, Todd, that we give not only to the state, to the region, to the country, so that they know, so when we are back in the classroom full time, our students and our teachers understand just how important this industry is to our region and to our state. So those are just a couple of things that we're working on.
Well, those are tangible efforts that you have underway that I know that will be impactful for workforce development and engagement. I also noticed that healthcare is another one of the PSP's focus areas. I know the pandemic has really, impacted healthcare just as it has any other segment of our economy. But how specifically has COVID impacted your efforts to improve healthcare in the Permian, as this has been also a priority?
Well, we know that even pre-COVID-19, there just quite simply aren't enough doctors and nurses and physicians assistants out here in the Permian Basin. We are a huge landmass with miles and miles and not enough healthcare experts out here. So that was pre-COVID-19. What COVID-19 showed us is that now more than ever, we need more dedicated healthcare professionals out here to serve the great citizens of the Permian Basin. And so we were fortunate enough to be able to be a partner in doubling doctor residencies. We partnered with Texas Tech last year. And so we're going to see more boots on the ground when it comes to doctor residencies, and we're very excited about that. The other thing, Todd, that I think needs to be talked about more, quite frankly, is in the vein of mental and behavioral health. We know that rural areas across this country are starting to see the next pandemic, some experts have called it, when it comes to access to quality behavior and mental health care. And we are certainly seeing that in the Permian Basin. And so when, getting folks the resources that they need is going to be a top priority for PSP and so many others in our community. And we talk about, connecting a huge basin, and you really can't do that, which leads me to my next priority and point, without connectivity and broadband. That's really going to be the key to quality education, to quality access to healthcare, and so many of the other things that we're talking about, as we have got to get rural America and certainly the Permian Basin connected.
Well, broadband enhances healthcare opportunities. Great point. And it really drives the message about the need for essential infrastructure. Whether it's broadband, whether it is electric lines to connect communities, or whether it's, pipelines, essential infrastructure to move that product from the Permian and the Panhandle to our ports and along the Gulf Coast, where much of our refining industry is situated. And so the things that you all are doing will have a great impact. In economic development and in community development that I've had the privilege of being a part of a lot of my career, I think the general public, if things are working right, they're busy raising their family, they're doing their jobs, and so they may not see the work that all of you are doing. So I want to compliment the PSP and the leadership, you, Don Evans, and the companies that are a part of your team. You're really making a difference. When I think about oil and gas and the history of Texas, we are oil and gas. Texas is oil and gas. And so if, what's good for oil and gas has been good for Texas. What's good for Texas is good for oil and gas. The people of the Permian know that. You live it, you see it every day. But it's a big state. We have, 28 million Texans today. And so I think not everyone understands the role that oil and gas plays in their lives because they're not in the middle of the oil patch. Is this something that you think about at the PSP, the areas that are outside the Permian, and maybe, you know, what can be done about it?
You just nailed it, Todd. It's something that we think about every single day out here, because you're exactly right. Those of us who live in the Permian and folks like you who understand the importance of this industry, not only to the state, but to our country and the world, we're busy producing the energy that everybody needs and going about our jobs. But we do have folks who don't live here, who don't appreciate where their electricity and their affordable energy comes from. And that's a big challenge for us, but it's so important. I cannot think of a time in this country and foreign industry where an election has mattered so much. And energy should not be a partisan issue. The world and this country and this state needs affordable energy, and there is no better place than in the world than the Permian Basin to get that energy. We have so much of it, and we're so blessed, and we have amazing companies out here who are constantly innovating and doing the right thing and creating jobs and fueling this economy, and we should embrace that. It should not be a Democrat or Republican issue. And I am hoping that all of us will implore our friends and our family and everybody that we know to vote for candidates who appreciate the oil and gas industry.
Well, Tracee, we know that the future of the Permian and the Panhandle is bright with bright people like you who are standing shoulder to shoulder with the men and women in this industry. And we thank you for being a part of our conversation today. We thank you for your continued leadership for oil and natural gas. I know our industry could not survive without partnerships promoting the real tangible things that oil and gas is doing and the impact that it has on individualized communities in Texas as a whole. So let me say thank you for joining us today.
Todd, thank you. Thank you so much for having me and for having this discussion.
We'll do it again. Thanks a bunch. Well, thank you, Governor Patrick. We appreciate your leadership for Texas. I want to thank Mayor Payton for his vision for this industry and his willingness to engage. And then Texas is very fortunate to have Tracee Bentley with the Permian Strategic Partnership that have all joined us this morning for a very thoughtful discussion. My mother was actually born in the Permian Basin, and my grandfather is buried in the Permian Basin. So I appreciate personally and from our family's perspective this region of Texas and what you mean to all of our state. Folks, we know there are challenges ahead. You heard about many of them today, but our state and communities in the Permian Basin and the Panhandle have a bright future ahead, but they have issues that they have to deal with. There are budgetary issues. We want you to know that the oil and natural gas industry looks forward to bouncing back. We want to help restart our economy. We want to get this pandemic behind us and get demand returned to where it needs to be. Texas oil and natural gas is making our nation and our state cleaner, stronger, better. We're proud to partner with businesses and families in the Panhandle and in the Permian Basin who want a bright future for you and for your families and for your communities. Today, we're so thankful to each of you that have joined us for our program. Getting the right information out is absolutely what's needed for sound energy policy. That's why we invite you to take your phones right now at this moment, wherever you're at, pick up your smartphone, and I want you to text these numbers, 52886. That's the only number you have to put in, 52886. You see it on your screen. Put in the word TXOGA, and this will subscribe you to email updates and give you that option of what you want to look at to find out essential information about the oil and natural gas industry. I promise we won't spam you, and you can unsubscribe at any time. Lastly, next week, I want you to know we'll be conducting 3 more of these webinars in our virtual Energy Summit series. We're going to be covering El Paso and the Big Bend region. We're going to be looking at the Eagle Ford Shale and Laredo. We're going to be looking at the southern Gulf Coast of Texas. And so we're going to be doing these events, and then we'll have a couple of more the following week, so that we hope that you'll register at the TXOGA events page, TXOGA.org, for all of these events, and that you'll join us. To close today, we have a short video that I know you'll want to see. It's the key to the success in the energy world. That is the men and women who make up this fantastic industry. Thanks for joining us. Have a great week.
What does it mean to be an employee of the energy industry? It means hard work, dedication, and ingenuity. It means utilizing the latest innovative technologies. It means proudly serving the industry that's defined Texas over the last 100 years. Our industry has fueled our past, and Texans can count on us to fuel our next 100 years. We work because we care about Texas, our nation, and our world. And we're committed to building a better future. Excellence is our standard. Safety, security, and science are at our core. Over 100 years of excellence, ingenuity, and innovation. And we are always looking for ways to improve. Because this is our economy, our environment, and our future too.